Welcome back to the Real Estate 401k Show. I'm your host, Mike Weinstein, alongside Justin Frederick and Ryan Gerdes. You're going to want to go ahead and text the word SQUAT to 623-AZ-RECON. That's SQUAT to 623-AZ-RECON. I know everybody's looking at me right now. I'm not talking about the weight room. I don't do squats anymore.
I don't think that's what they were thinking about, dude.
You rat bastard. Everybody has got political opinions, and I think we're like in episode 160 something, and we are very, very careful on this show not to get into politics, lean to the right, lean to the left, go down the middle. Politics means nothing to us. We are all about helping people create personal wealth in real estate. So this might be a first for us because this is an incredibly controversial topic in America right now. There is no question that a lot of states and a lot of municipalities and a lot of property owners are facing challenges with people squatting in their homes. And a lot of states have made it very, very difficult for homeowners to remove squatters. There have been politicians, influencers, and celebrities all in favor of allowing people to squat in property owners' homes. As a matter of fact, there's other people explaining which states are best for this and how to actually do it. So this is the first time I'm going to get really political on this show. I couldn't be more against allowing people to illegally squat in my home than I can be. It makes me angry that there are people out there that think it's okay and think it should be legal for somebody who doesn't own the home, is not renting the home, not paying me any type of compensation to live in the home, to stay in there for free. And they're pointing their finger at people like me saying, I'm the bad guy.
Yeah. What boils my blood even more is that they've come up with a name for it. Squatters' rights. Meaning that they have some type of legal right to occupy. So in my brain, that's straight up stealing.
It is, because, I mean, as the homeowner, you're required to pay taxes. You're required to pay your mortgage. And if you don't pay that, you're gone. Yeah. But somebody else can just walk in and have a seat and take a nap and
take a long nap.
We're okay with that?
Now, definitely shame on the landlords or the property owners that aren't managing their properties or aren't keeping an eye on those things. But even if they aren't, and they said, you know what, I'm turning a new leaf, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to check on this, they should be able to say, hey, look, you are going to be removed immediately without prejudice.
All right, and we haven't talked about this ahead of time, Ryan, but I am, without your permission and your authorization, I'm going to probably...
When's the last time you ever did anything with my permission?
Lunch. Where we're going for wings, right?
Shoot.
But we're going to have listeners, and maybe people are thinking about texting into our show, listening to this. I'm just telling you, if you think it's okay for a squatter to live in my home for free and possibly damage my home, I'm not the real estate wealth manager for you. I'm not the guy for you. I don't want to. I mean, you don't like money because you don't like my money. You don't respect my money, and you don't respect my ownership rights. All right, so enough being passionate about it.
How do you really feel, Mike?
Yeah.
Hold on, let me take a drink.
Do we need a couch in here or what, bro?
All right, Arizona Senator Wendy Rogers from the great city of Flagstaff has sponsored a bill in Arizona called Senate Bill 1129. It is on its way to Governor Hobbs' desk. We don't know how she's going to... Okay, first of all, Governor Hobbs, she is already... What month are we in? April. She holds the record right now in vetoes for a year. So she's just like a veto machine. But this bill has been supported by 8 Democrats. So hopefully we're going to have some luck with this. But if this bill does pass and does get signed by Governor Hobbs, it will ultimately allow people, homeowners, to provide a sworn affidavit to law enforcement in order to prove that people who are staying on their property are not authorized to be there. And if the occupants do not leave, they would be charged with trespassing, and the law enforcement then can take the next step and actually remove them from the property. This is just not an Arizona thing. Other states their eyes are glued to Governor Hobbs right now to see what she does, because this is a huge problem.
Oh, I can imagine most of California any property owner in California is probably loving this right now. D.C., Oregon, Washington. This could be a big game changer for a lot of metropolitan areas or just kind of, let's just call it what it is, blue states, right? Because that's typically where it ends up happening.
I feel like growing up, it was just common knowledge that you don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's common knowledge. You don't go pitch a tent in somebody's yard. Like, that's their yard. That's trespassing.
Yeah.
When did it flip?
We're not even talking about pitching a tent. We're talking about moving into the house.
I understand. Yeah. I'm just saying, like, the basics. Like, hey, my parents told me you can't ride your bike in somebody else's yard, let alone just go inside their house. What the hell is happening here?
Yeah. I fully expect if I'm going to walk on somebody's property without like letting them know that I'm there, that there's a good chance I'm met with a shotgun.
Right.
All right. So the direction I want to take it in, guys, then is one of the things when I talk to our listeners, our followers, and we talk about investing, or we have current investors, most of the time conversations come up about other markets in the country. Where should I invest? I can buy this in Alabama, or I can buy this in Mississippi, or I can buy this here, and the numbers look really, really good. I always maintain, and I'm not going to say that Arizona is the only place to invest your money, but one of the factors I think that you have to consider when you're buying investment properties, especially for rental purposes, are how does the state view landlords and their rights, because that's a huge deal. And I've always maintained Texas is probably one of the best states. It's the wild, wild west. They'll hang you down there. They don't really care, right? They'll show up with 6-shooters and horses and and remove those squatters. And next thing you know, they're hanging from a mulberry tree. Yeah. But Arizona's always been favorable. Do they have mulberry trees in Texas?
I've got to imagine they do. We have them here.
But I think this is a underestimated factor when it comes to considering what state to invest in. And one of the reasons that I invest a lot of my resources in Arizona, because in a lot of my investment properties, I'm becoming a landlord, and you have to ask the question, what happens when that tenant, well, one, now, if they're squatting, and two, they don't pay their rent. It's an important factor.
Well, and contracts follow laws. So what I mean by that is whenever there's a law enacted, then it's usually those attorneys that were part of that lawmaking decision that are writing the boilerplate for those contracts that are most common practice for wherever you are. Like here, AAR, we have our contracts here that are our residential lease agreement. I'm sure that it's extremely different than one you'd find in Nebraska or wherever else, right? It's just going to have different boilerplate in there. And so that being said, we have the Arizona Landlord Tenant Act, which has been widely adopted by a lot of other different states, and for the most part, it originated here. And so that being said, these are primarily written in the favor of the tenant, because they assume that because you're a real estate investor, that you're a little bit more savvy on real estate than a common tenant. And in most cases, they would be right. Mm-hmm. So that being said, they've written a lot of things to favor the tenant and make it more difficult for a landlord to evict, to get rid of squatters, to withhold security deposits. I mean, you name it, right? And so I like that it's moving towards a more balanced responsibility and accountability, because there's plenty of tenants out there that are very savvy with these laws, and then they go and they exploit them. Particularly during COVID, we saw that. And then they even came out with that whole memorandum. What was the name of the memorandum? Where landlords couldn't evict.
I forgot the name.
It's already escaping me, but we all know what the overall premise is, and it wasn't to protect landlords.
No, not even a little bit.
So I do enjoy seeing at least it popping up on the radar over here, whether it gets passed or not. It's a step in the right direction. It's kind of like how they legalized weed. It took them about 15 different attempts to get it to pass.
Now, I see Justin getting all giddy, and I want to clarify, Justin, your children are not squatters. So this doesn't apply to removing your children from your home.
I was really hoping that I could go ahead and call Peoria PD. And
yeah, right. You're a sap for your kids.
I am. I love them.
Yeah, I think Sabrina's more inclined to be the first one to call Peoria PD, and it's not going to be on your
Not
kids.
anymore.
Yeah.
All right, if you are interested in learning more about squatter rights and just understanding different investment markets across the country and the things that you need to consider, it's not just about price point and rental rates and positive or negative cash flow, because you always have to plan for what if this happens and what if the bad happens. We'd love to have that conversation with you. We'd love to strategize with you. All you got to do is text the word SQUAT to 623-AZ-RECON. That's SQUAT to 623 AZ Recon. Now, Ryan, you did mention the Landlord-Tenant Act. I've always found, and I do agree with you, the Landlord-Tenant Act does favor the tenants, but I think I've always felt like only slightly, because if the landlord follows the letter of the law and does everything that they're supposed to, the landlord does have some good power. And in Arizona, that's what I always loved about Arizona, is in the event that my tenant stops paying rent, and I follow the timelines, and you got to follow the timelines, and it ends up with the sheriff's department or constable or whoever does it in Arizona actually has to go and physically remove them. It's about a 28-day process. You had mentioned COVID. We've got some mutual friends out there that have clients that had investment properties where the tenants stopped paying rent, and they were in there for 15, 18 months. The poor seller was trying to sell their properties, and the state of California, as they do, what's necessary written in contracts or acts or whatever is not necessarily that important.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, man. We've taken a lot more measures to keep the weight distributed a little more evenly than some other states. But at the end of the day, there's a tenant can still live there for 28 days for free. And, if we're talking about a luxury property, well, any property, it's all relative, right? Mm-hmm. It's still free when they sign.
When you own it, it's personal.
Yeah, they signed a contract saying that they would pay for it, and they didn't. And so I know it's a harsh word, but again, to me, it's stealing.
It's simple.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems simple to me.
I know.
You don't pay.
I know it's black and white.
You don't get to stay.
I know there's circumstances. I know that life happens. I know that really, really bad things happen to good people. But usually those measures aren't going to be met in those situations if they're calling up, having a conversation, saying, "Hey, look, how can we figure this thing out?" And I've found that most landlords are receptive to that type of approach, but for some reason or another, those bad situations usually stem from the tenant just saying, you know what, I'm going to not answer the door. I'm not going to answer my phone, text messages, or whatever. I'm just simply not going to pay, and I'm going to stay here. And that's the solution to their problems. And so, yeah, that's what I normally see.
All right. Well, there's about, I would consider about 100 to 110 major markets across the country, many markets to choose from to invest your real estate dollars in, and squatters' rights and eviction process. That's just one of the questions that you need to ask. And if you'd love to have a conversation with one of our real estate wealth managers and go deeper into the considerations that you need to make in these individual markets, the questions that you need to ask yourself, we'd love to have that conversation with you. Go ahead and text the word SQUAT to 623 AZ Recon. That's squat to 623 AZ Recon. Ryan, I'm going to put you on the spot. What can you currently squat?
Oh, I don't know. I know that back in high school, my max was 600.
Okay.
I could squat
Justin?
600.
I don't even know. Let's just say 450.
450. And last time I squat, there were 2 Big Macs, one in each hand, and it was a beautiful, glorious thing. All right, takes the word squat to 623 AZ Recon.